The Shroud of Turin, which some believe to be the actual burial cloth. NBC's chief international correspondent Keir Simmons traveled to Italy for a closer look. Keir?
Hey there, guys. Good morning. Italy has been home to the Turin Shroud for hundreds of years. This simple piece of cloth, 14 feet long, worshipped by the faithful for centuries, puzzling scientists for decades, was at last due to go on public display this year. Now we know it will stay hidden away. The controversial and mysterious Shroud of Turin, revered by millions, hasn't been seen by the public for 10 years. And this Easter, officials say once again the fragile cloth will not be put on display. Many Catholics believe it captures the exact moment of the resurrection 2 millennia ago.
On this Good Friday, a new book claims the Shroud of Turin is no forgery. The shroud is a cloth that, according to tradition, was used to wrap the body of Jesus after his crucifixion. 25 years ago, the British Museum tested the shroud and decided it was made more than 1,000 years after Jesus died. Now scientists have done infrared tests on the piece of cloth. They say it's up to 2,300 years old, so it could be the real thing.
I had the chance to see it up close. Such a spiritual atmosphere. NBC, one of the last news organisations given access to this holy icon. Today, as with so much, technology is taking over. The faint contours on the relic have been used to generate AI images of Christ. And at Turin Cathedral, believers will only be able to see a digital duplicate of the shroud this year. It will stay locked away in a climate-controlled case for conservation. In centuries past, the shroud would be brought out for the faithful to witness and worship, a ritual dating back to medieval times. The shroud arrived here in Italy almost 450 years ago during the 16th century. Before that, in the 14th century, it was in France. Before that, nothing. A mystery. Some say all that matters is whether you believe in it. Others question its authenticity.
An apparent new discovery regarding the Shroud of Turin. Reports say there is new evidence the shroud is 2,000 years old, which coincides with our Lord's life and crucifixion. These reports originally surfaced in 2022, but what appears to be new are studies concluded earlier this summer. They were focused on bloodstains and scourge marks found on the shroud and allude to Christ's death by being nailed to a cross, a common method of execution by the Romans at the time in 33 AD. And for analysis, we turn now to Father Robert Spitzer, president of the Magis Center of Reason and Faith. He is also the host of EWTN's Father Spitzer's Universe. Father Spitzer, great to be with you today. As we know, you've written and lectured on the shroud for many, many years. Now, what is your reaction to this new scientific research?
Well, I think it has been out there and piling up for quite some time now. This new wide-angle X-ray scattering test is a very good, reliable, peer-reviewed test that was put together by Dr. Liberato Di Caro and his team at the Italian National Labs. I think the result is excellent. It was done on several different strands from the Shroud of Turin taken from different places, and it shows pretty conclusively that the shroud originated between 54 to 75 AD, right in that area, because the samples matched from this test the same samples that were taken from linens that are accurately dated with an excellent provenance back to that time in Israel. I think the test is good because it's non-carbon related, so you don't have to worry about any carbon buildup from, for example, the fire of Chambéry in the 1500s, and you don't have to worry about neutron irradiation that could have come from this radiation burst that led to the image on the shroud that might have transformed the N14, the nitrogen 14, into carbon 14 and elevated the carbon content. So this is really a carbon-free test. I think it accurately portrays a 2,000-year age for the Shroud of Turin, right at the mid-first century, at the time of Christ.
When you consider that there are no substances on the cloth that were conceivably used by an artist, and the fact that the blood on the cloth is human blood, it would suggest that the cloth is probably authentic.
This 14-foot-long linen cloth is believed to have covered Jesus Christ's crucified body 2,000 years ago. The fabric is covered in bloodstains, dirt, and watermarks, and displays an actual imprint of a man's face.
There was no portrait made of Jesus, so really the shroud still remains the best single thing that we have.
Non-believers know the cloth as the Shroud of Turin. Over the past century, scientists have used methods such as carbon dating to test the authenticity of the fabric, most recently determining it to be a medieval forgery. But in a new book, scientists at Padua University in northern Italy say they've unraveled that claim. Still, it's not just seeing, it's believing that makes the difference.
But what's really important is if we find cosmogenic isotopes embedded in that shroud in the next scientific investigation, things like chlorine 36 and calcium 41, which really only happen near, an atomic reaction. If we find those embedded in the shroud in any abundance, we'll know that this shroud was produced by a tremendous burst of particle radiation, which frankly would be so unusual. There's no scientific naturalistic explanation for it. It would really have to be a kind of a supernatural event, in which the entire body, 7 octillion perfectly stable atomic nuclei, actually were transformed into particles that etched the image of the shroud, the image of the man onto the shroud, and this would, the odds of this happening simultaneously at one point in time are about the same as a monkey typing the first 2 acts of Macbeth perfectly by random tapping of the keys in a single try. But the main thing is, if this really does pan out, you not only have evidence for the existence of Jesus, you would also have evidence for his passion and crucifixion, and also evidence that the gospel narratives actually recorded the history of the passion and crucifixion precisely as it occurred. So in other words, the shroud validates the gospel narratives, and so the gospel narratives really would be talking about this unique crucifixion event with a crown of thorns, a spear in the side, etc. All this is writ large, anatomically, scientifically on the Shroud of Turin. But more than that, you would actually have a significant evidence of a tremendous burst of radiation. This is the most unusual image in the world today. There's no image like it, and it's the most scientifically tested historical artifact in history. So you have this together, and that would provide,
And here are the scourge marks. It's a photograph of the moment of the resurrection.
The Vatican has never said it is Christ on the cloth, but in 1988 it allowed tests to be made on samples from the shroud. The results dated the fabric to the 12th century, but was that carbon dating flawed? Filmmaker David Rolfe says it was. After producing several documentaries about the shroud, even being given rare permission to film the real thing, he is now a believer.
I have absolutely no doubt the person depicted on this cloth is Jesus of Nazareth.
In the southern Italian city of Bari, research to redate the shroud continues. This scientific team, led by Catholic professor Liberato De Caro, has tested thread from the cloth with a technique called X-ray crystallography, which analyzes matter at an atomic level. He agrees it is from classical times.
The sample taken from the shroud must be 2000 years old. In the next centuries, shroud will be studied with more sophisticated techniques, but I don't know if there will be a final answer.
And in this virtual age, 2,000 years since the crucifixion, as science and technology change the way we see the shroud, the icon itself is becoming more and more remote. So new technology is shedding a new light on questions like how old is the Turin shroud? Is it authentic? Does it matter if you cannot stand in front of the real thing, as I did? But our fascination, that isn't changing, guys.
It's only deepened with Keir's report. That was really cool.
I know. He really pulled us into that one.